In the book Health for Life, you also claim, or you say that there's no disease, there's only symptoms. That was also a very interesting statement. Can you kind of clarify your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the best way probably to illustrate it is with a few examples. A good one is always to understand is, somebody ends up in their, 20s or 30s or even 40s with acid reflux, right? So it becomes bothersome, it becomes painful, and we go to the doctor. And what is the doctor going to do? They're going to prescribe us that purple pill, Nexium, right? To kind of counteract the acidity and not have the symptoms. Now, what we're doing really here is hiding the symptoms, but we're not asking, and the doctor's certainly not asking, why is there an indigestion? Why is the acid coming up into our throat? What's causing it? Nobody asked that. But the answer is pretty simple. We are combining certain foods. And in the long run, the body cannot compensate for that anymore, and it's going to send things back up, right? And when I say combining foods, again, we can go back to the animals we talked about, because animals don't combine foods. But even from a pure biological, physiological point of view, here's the explanation. If we eat proteins, our stomach acidity needs to be at a certain pH in order to break those down. And those proteins need a very specific enzyme to break them down. And that enzyme is called pepsin. Now, let's say we eat carbohydrates. Carbohydrates need a different acidity, a different pH in our body to break down. It also needs a different enzyme called amylase to digest those carbohydrates. Now, let's say we combine the proteins and the carbohydrates, like a meatball sandwich. The sandwich is the carbohydrates, the meatball is the proteins, right? Or any other type of sandwich, or spaghetti with meatballs, or we eat a steak with mashed potatoes or a baked potato, you name it. We combine those both, we eat them at the same time. The body doesn't know what to do. What acidity are we using? What enzymes are we excreting? So the body needs to make a choice. So it's going to say, okay, we're going to break down the proteins first. So we need pepsin and we need a certain acidity. So now the carbohydrates are going to sit there for at least 6 hours waiting for the proteins to be digested. During that time, those carbohydrates will ferment. They will rot. They will excrete, they will become toxic. There will be toxins, there will be no benefit. And so the body constantly compensates for that, but at a certain point, it's gonna say, I can't do it anymore. And there is our first symptom of indigestion, in this case, acid reflux. What we're doing is we're not telling the patient like, hey, we gotta stop combining these certain foods because your digestive system can't handle anymore. Because Sean, it would go away in 1 week. You will not have those symptoms anymore. But we take this pill Nexium, and what happens is this, okay, we're dealing with this acid reflux and it may be working. But meanwhile, we continue to accelerate the symptoms. We continue to evolve because we're not taking the cause away. And X years later, we end up with a stomach ulcer, okay? Meaning the problem got worse. We go to the doctor. Again, the doctor's not going to say, look, it's time that we change your diet or the way we do things, or let's try to figure out what's causing it. No, we're just going to remove that ulcer. Problem solved, Band-Aid done, but we didn't change our habits. So another decade later, we end up with stomach cancer, and hopefully we'll survive it. So what we're doing here is we have a simple symptom that could have an easy solution that could have been resolved in a week and never would have returned. But instead, we're putting on a Band-Aid. The symptoms continue to get worse and worse and worse, and we'll end up with cancer decades later, which all easily could have been prevented if the doctor knew what he was talking about or was interested in finding out the cause of this symptom. So when we do an autopsy, we could say, oh, this person died of cancer. Well, really not. Cancer was the last symptom. What the person really died of was years and years of, unhealthy lifestyle habits. In this case, combining the wrong foods. We can say after an autopsy, this person died of a heart attack. Well, that was the last symptom. But did they really die of a heart attack? No, they died of eating a large cheese pizza for the last 3 decades. you know, clogging up their arteries, their triglycerides went to the 300-400s, you know. So again, the cause really was not heart attack. That was the last symptom. Okay. So to me, there is no disease, there's symptoms, and we can stop and reverse those. And if we don't, they just get worse and worse and worse.